So we're now at a point where we have a very well-established body of evidence that we know that simulation works, that it shortens learning curves, that it can improve outcomes. Software and hardware can give us a fairly realistic simulation of surgical and medical procedures. The evidence base there is there such that we know that actually this is a technology that can improve patient care and can improve patient outcomes. We know that the Royal College is pushing simulation heavily, but for various reasons that uptake on a national level has actually been quite low, and that trainees' access to simulators is actually quite scarce. The advantages of simulation are really very well documented. So there's also the cost of running a live operating theatre. Beyond that, it's the other issue is of how to best educate a trainee who is developing a certain skill set. And that often is not in the real-life operating room, where if you consider that most of your learning happens when you're right at the edge of your competency, if you're allowing a trainee just to do the simple stuff in the real world, as it were, then they may not be pushing themselves. And their learning curve is slowly going to grow, but not at an optimal level. Whereas if you can do that in a simulated environment, you can present them with an increasingly complex scenario that continues to push that boundary of their learning. And we know from lots of evidence and lots of research that actually the learning curve involved in developing a new skill or picking up a new talent or learning a new procedure is really highly attenuated when you go through a simulated-based learning environment versus learning something the more traditional way, just through the apprenticeship model of seeing it over and over again. So I think the advantages of simulation really are clear, and for people looking to introduce that, there can only be benefits. In terms of the advancement of where simulation is going, the inclusion of haptics and immersive VR with the headset is where all the cutting-edge devices now are going, and where undoubtedly they're going to be in the future as we continue to drive for a simulation model that is more realistic, more immersive, and better approximates the actual feeling of being in the OR. Via a low-cost and sort of a SaaS model, then avoids the major negatives. So you're avoiding the upfront cost. As the mandate becomes stronger and stronger to provide simulation training, and I think the acceptance of simulation as an education modality continues to increase, I think there will probably become an obligatory aspect to simulation training. Already in the States, we're seeing that their very basic low-fidelity box trainers are mandatory to progression in surgical training, and I can only see that increasing. And at the moment, it's simply because the lowest fidelity models are the best validated. They're not even particularly cheap, so I don't even think that cost is an issue here, but it's simply the level of fidelity and level of evidence behind that. And as the higher fidelity models become more realistic and the body of evidence solidifies behind them, I can only see that progressing beyond just the basic generic skills.